Hi, I'm Matt Shepard.
And I'm Chad Shepard.
And today on Shep Shower and Shave, Lions act quickly to solve their left tackle gap. Is it enough? Does Miguel Cabrera deserve the benefit of the doubt, especially now that he's been honest about his back injury? And the Red Wings protection list is due out this weekend. Who should be exposed? Plus, would you buy the McGregor-Mayweather fight? Not me. Chad differs. That's coming up next on this edition of Shep Shower and Shave. All right, so the Lions were in a dire situation because Taylor Decker's shoulder surgery doesn't really give them an idea of when he can truly be back. I've always wondered this. What is the progression for a rookie tackle from one year to the next? In other words, what could we expect from Taylor Decker from last year to this year? Last year, I think he only gave up 4 sacks from his left tackle position. He had a really good year, especially as a rookie left tackle. But you're going to invest a ton of money in Matt Stafford. We understand where he is in the landscape of NFL quarterback, and we also understand he's the best player on this team and is the most important player on this team. This is not Alex Smith in Kansas City. This is Matt Stafford with the Lions. It's vital to protect him. I think what Bob Quinn did was go out and recognize the dire need that this team had, not just for offensive linemen starting, but for offensive linemen and the depth position. So he goes out, he gets TJ Lane and Rick Wagner, puts them on the right side, and recognizes that's going to really help our pass protection and our run offense. Then he figures he's all set on the left side. Then the Decker injury happens. Are you going to really go into a season knowing that Joe Dahl barely dressed a year ago, even though he's a good left tackle at Washington State? He really was, as a good pass protector. But they've positioned him more as an interior lineman. Are you going to go into a season with a guy who hasn't taken a snap at left tackle in who knows how long, since he was a Cougar, and give him that job on the left side, or give it to a undrafted free agent in Cornelius Lucas or Corey Robinson? No way. They go out, they get a bona fide starter. Is he a Pro Bowl? He's not the second coming of Anthony Munoz. I don't expect him to be Jonathan Ogden, but he was the second overall pick. He is a massive human being at 6'5", 325 pounds, and he's a guy who started there. He's comfortable there. There's something to be said for that. And I think what Bob Quinn is basically telling anybody who will listen, Chad, is that, hey, you know what? We've got an opportunity here. We've got an opportunity to be pretty good on the offensive side, but we can't do anything if number 9 is on his back on a regular basis. We can't do anything if we can't protect him. I've spent too much time, resource, and energy fixing the offensive line on the right side. I'm not going to let this one injury curtail or derail my progress on the left side.
Right. I really like what Bob Quinn has done here and how quickly he's acted and authoritatively he's acted. I mean, moving with conviction, making decisions with conviction to get this problem solved quickly, or at least hopefully put a solution in there. And the key word in your explanation, I thought, was give. He doesn't want to give that job to anybody. Mm-hmm. So forget Joe Dahl. He didn't want to give that to Cyrus Kouandjio. He didn't want to give that to Greg Robinson. What he's done is created an opportunity for competition. He's created a need for those guys to earn that job. And I've heard people kick around the idea of moving Rick Wagner over, but why weaken 2 positions?
Right, exactly right.
Why do that when you know Rick Wagner is going to be one of the best right tackles in the league for you? Right. And it's not like in the late 90s or the early 2000s when the blindside left tackle was that much better or that much dramatically different than the right tackle. Both sides of the line are almost under equal need for protection here at this point. I know the term blindside is still important and the left tackle still gets the big paydays, but the Lions helped start to reverse that trend this year with the money they gave Rick Wagner.
Right.
So there's no sense in weakening 2 positions by kicking him over. You talked about Greg Robinson.
But why would you do that, honestly, I mean, before you keep going, why would you do that in the first place knowing that Rick Wagner is primarily a right tackle?
Because it's a bad misperception by local fans and media that the best offensive lineman on your team has to be your left tackle. That's not the case. Even the way that the Dallas Cowboys built their awesome offensive line, obviously Tyron Smith is an absolute animal and a beast. But the first thing they did after that, I believe, was go draft Travis Frederick in the first round. There was center from Wisconsin. They built from the inside out.
Right.
Then they went to get Zach Martin, and then they shored up the other side as guys like Doug Free were retiring on the right side.
Lyle Collins brought in as free agent.
Yeah, so you bring in the best guys, and you're going to leave Rick Wagner in a position of strength. But I love the way that Bob Quinn has addressed this, and it's something that has been addressed in an SB Nation article by Jeff Schwartz, who had a cup of coffee with the cup of coffee with the Lions a couple of training camps ago, and he's been a good analyst in terms of offensive linemen, breaking down film, breaking down scheme fits, and I think a lot of people don't do themselves the service of understanding teams' offensive schemes, and he's really excited about Greg Robinson for the Lions in that sense because the Lions work a lot out of quick pass sets. The ball is out of Matt Stafford's hands quickly. They run jump sets out of pass protection, and they think the technique that Greg Robinson has shown in his college days and in his short time with the Rams has shown that he actually has a potential to take a step forward here with the Lions. So I think a change of scenery is something that's been needed for him, and hopefully this is something that produces benefits for both parties.
Then why sign Cyrus Kouandjio? I mean, why go out there and get two offensive tackles?
Because it's exactly what I talked about. You got to create an opportunity for competition. If Greg Robinson comes in, I mean, seriously, what kind
but
of...
you had competition before.
No.
Well, you had Corey Robinson and Cornelius Lucas. There's still competition
The only
there.
thing they've competed for over the last couple of years is who can prove with a better sense of security that they're not capable of being an everyday NFL offensive lineman. So those guys have had their chance to compete. Right. Joe Dahl, and maybe they've been able to tell from the get-go, Joe Dahl is not going to be our problem, our solution here. Maybe after a couple days of camp, they were able to tell Joe Dahl is not our solution here. But the point is, unlike previous regimes, they're not going to just hope that they already have a solution in-house or wait until week 4 of the regular season when Joe Dahl is struggling massively and then you go try and talk Jason Peters out of retirement. They've done something with conviction and with authority here, and they didn't give that job to Greg Robinson.
Right.
Can you imagine what Lions fans would be saying right now if you didn't sign Cyrus Kouandjio? I know it's a 6th-round pick. I don't think anyone's going to get up in arms about losing a 6th-round pick. But if they said, yeah, we're just going to have Greg Robinson walk right in here and be our starting left tackle, that's not going to appease Lions fans either. They know that
But that's not their job. Their job isn't to appease Lions fans. What you said earlier is right. It's to create competition. They've recognized. They've had a chance. They don't just come in here as a new regime. They don't just come into Lions camp and go, you know what? Let's just accept everything for what the past regime thought. They go in and they critique everybody on this team. They've watched film of every practice. They've watched film of every game, every preseason game, everything they've needed to. They've come to the conclusion, my belief, they've come to the conclusion that our depth is lacking on the offensive line. And there's no way that two specific guys, Cornelius Lucas and Corey Robinson, can be sufficient in our backup roles. We need more quality backup offensive linemen. And they've done that by acquiring these two individuals, no matter who starts and who backs up, and even when Taylor Decker comes back. When Taylor Decker comes back and is healthy and earns that spot back, you're still in pretty good shape with guys who are backing those positions up. Graham Glasgow can back up. He can be the starting left guard, can back up center. Travis Swanson can actually play guard like he can before. I know a lot of people are really down on Detroit's former first-round pick as a guard, and I understand it, but Laken Tomlinson can play maybe two guard positions. That can be valuable. I wouldn't want that in him out of my first-round pick, but I'm just telling you, they've been able to build some quality depth along that offensive line. It's something that they've been lacking for years.
And it's been a focus of Bob Quinn since he got here. One of the first things he did, if I recall correctly, was trade for Manny Ramirez from Denver, and in all of these trades where he's picking up these pieces, he has not given up a ton to go get a veteran offensive lineman that isn't going to be a stop or isn't going to be a lockdown guy. Like he gave big money to TJ Lang, he gave big money to Rick Wagner.
Right.
But guys that haven't proven themselves or aren't
right.
sure
Manny Ramirez
things,
was before that.
He's
but
not giving a lot up for. Okay, maybe it wasn't him that pulled the trigger on the decision.
No.
But the point is that the problem is been one that for some time.
There's no question. Look, you and I both know that the problem that the Lions will have going into the preseason or training camp, if you will, is now no longer as much. Okay, we still don't know what Greg Robinson can bring. We don't know what Cyrus Kouandjio can bring. We don't know who's going to be that starting left tackle. We know the rest of that offensive line is set. It's going to be Glasgow. It's going to be Swanson. It's going to be Lang, and it's going to be Rick Wagner, okay? We know about primarily the wide receivers, okay? You don't draft a kid in the 3rd round, Kenny Golladay, for him to sit. You hope that he sets up with Tate and Marvin Jones. You know who you're running back. You're pretty much well established on your offensive side of the football. The left tackle will be a really good competition. Everything else is for backups. This way they can now focus, what do we need defensively? There still needs some guys, I think, along that defensive line, and I think their secondary is pretty well set. I think they've got good depth back there, they've got good experience back there, and they've got some talented, versatile guys. I think Bob Quinn has, in just a 2-year span, has really done a nice job of transforming this team into a much deeper team. That doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean they're going to win the division. It doesn't mean they're going to win NFC champions. I'm just telling you, I think this team, before the draft, before some of these moves, looked much weaker. Now they look a lot stronger and a lot deeper than they did before.
I don't think you can have too many good offensive linemen, and this is certainly not an issue of surplus that we've had to deal with in Detroit in the past.
No.
If Greg Robinson comes in and is a serviceable or better left tackle, who knows when Taylor Decker is going to get back? You hope that he only misses the 6 to 8 weeks as projected, but who knows?
Right,
Maybe
but you can't put a team together based on hope.
Right. So maybe he comes back a little bit sooner. We don't know exactly what that timetable is going to look like, but if he comes back later and Greg Robinson's able to hold down that position, that's a positive thing. By the by, the Lions have the Week 7 bye, so that's right in the middle of that Taylor Decker injury return timetable.
Yeah.
Maybe he comes back and Greg Robinson's been great. All of a sudden, you have another option at guard, and you don't just have your best backup being Laken Tomlinson. You don't just have your best backup on the right side being Cornelius Lucas or a player like that. Greg Robinson could provide some depth even when Taylor Decker returns at 2 positions as well. I know he's been a left tackle, but I think he could play a little bit of a guard as well if needed.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but look, as a swing tackle, as a guy who could back up Rick Wagner, you can never
6 lineman sets. Having them available, just having the luxury of the choice, which has never been an option in the past.
Yeah, and remember this: outside Darren Fells, who's a good blocking tight end, you got Michael Roberts.
Right.
You think he can do a decent enough job, but that's not what he's known for. Eric Ebron is not known for that either, and of course, as we mentioned before, Darren Fells. You never know what's going to happen. You cannot go into a football training camp and think, well, everybody's going to be healthy. No way, because it never happens.
No
okay? So what they've done now is I think they've built quality depth. Before, teams had depth, but there's a huge difference between quality depth and just regular depth. Detroit has the latter now.
I almost feel better knowing some of our injuries before the season. You almost feel like you're getting a couple of them out of the way and that some of the bad karma might not be in store for you later in the year.
Yeah.
It's like the calm before the storm, right? If you get to August, if you get to camp and everybody's healthy, you're looking around saying, all right, what's going to go wrong here?
Right, exactly.
When's it all going to fall through?
Yeah.
And then eventually it will, because it's a 17-week season.
I saw it with Jared DeVries. Jared DeVries was penciled in as the starting defensive end. They were counting on him big time. Training camp, early on in training camp, he gets basically a broken leg, and he's done for the year. And people are like, wow, now what do you do? Now suddenly you have to go searching. What he's done is he's made a preemptive strike. Bob Quinn's made a preemptive strike and said, look, I'm playing as if Taylor Decker may not be back. You guys in the media can read into it all you want, but what I'm going to do is I was going to need this anyway, because here's what I recognized. I've got some guys who aren't NFL linemen, so I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find a guy, and I can let this stuff sort itself out. Here's what I know. I've got better talent now than I did before the trade, and if I have to cut Jimmy Landis, oops, my 6th-round long snapper's pick from a year ago, then I'll bite that bullet. Not a big deal, man.
Don Muhlbach appears to be immortal anyway, so there's no need for Jimmy Landis.
Yeah, the only reason they even took Jimmy Landis is because Muhlbach makes a lot of money, but he earns it and deserves a lot of money.
Absolutely.
All right, let's shift gears, talk a little Tigers here. Miguel Cabrera last night had his 122nd career home run from the 7th inning or later. He bats over 300 in the 7th inning or later. His RBI total from the 7th inning on or later, because of that 2-run bomb last night, and then, that is big time. When you're hitting guys in at that time of the game, that's big time. He now has 436 career RBIs from the 7th inning or later. Doesn't mean the game's always on the line, but it's impressive.
His first walk-off since 2013. I believe the last time he had walked off, you were reporting that game as well, and caught an ice bucket bath after that one.
Is that how long it was?
Yeah, 2013 against the Royals, they said was his last walk-off win.
Yeah, that would have been it.
So, you've been the reporter on both of Miguel Cabrera's last 2 walk-offs.
I feel greatly fortunate.
Only got wet one time.
And by the way, he was not going to do the interview.
Really?
Yeah, because he was walking along the dugout, and I looked at him and I said, Miguel, I got to have you. And he said, okay. So he comes up. So we talk a little bit, and it was nice. It was nice to see him come through. It was nice to see the ovation he got, but I would remind you that earlier in the day, when he grounded into a 6-4-3 double play, he was booed. And I don't know if it was he being booed or the team being booed, but he was being booed. And I can't help but wonder, because I stood there and did the interview with him, I can't help but wonder if that got to him a little bit.
If that made him admit his injuries after the game, whereas
No.
before he had not, and he's never been one to make excuses.
You're right.
So might he have said, fans are actually in the dark on this information to the point where it's affecting their opinion of me as a baseball player, as a representative of their franchise. I want them to understand. Maybe it's not going to be the gladiator.
I don't think that was his reason, because he really got into the back issue afterwards, after I did the interview. But I do believe the booing hurt him. And I don't mean emotionally crush, oh my gosh, my girlfriend just broke up with me, oh my gosh, my dog just died, oh my gosh, I got a flat tire on the highway and I'm going to have to walk 16 miles to the nearest gas station. I mean, he looked around and he thought, really? You're going to boo me when I've given as much as I have? I don't think athletes have any issue whatsoever when fans or members of the media bring up certain, lack of a better word, negative connotations. All right? I mentioned of Justin Verlander last night. How did you like your outing? Then I brought up the 5 walks. I don't care what anybody says. The 5 walks are concerning in 7 innings. He's not used to being a pitcher who walks a lot of batters. So he didn't like it. He said, let's focus on the positive. That's fine. That's his prerogative. I'm just bringing up a fact that was brought up by Brad Ausmus and that was noted during the broadcast, and I thought it was fair. When you see Miguel Cabrera play, it's usually with a smile on his face. Maybe he's not smiling as much because of some struggles, although he is batting .280. Maybe he's not smiling as much because of the bad back. But I do believe in that post-game interview, he did not smile as much because he remembered fans booing him when he didn't come through and hit into a double play.
And I watched that game, so correct me if I'm stating this incorrectly, but I thought there were 2 instances of fans booing in that game. One was when K-Rod served up the dinger to Steven Souza Jr.
Yeah, and you can understand
that. The lead. Right, no, far more understandable. But my only point in saying that was a bit of a frustrating game for Tigers fans to watch, at least the ones that were at the park, probably because the offense had some opportunities earlier to score more than they did, and it took until later in the innings after K-Rod blew that lead and for Miguel Cabrera to walk it off. My point is there were other instances where the fans could have expressed that dissatisfaction. They could have booed other parts of the game. They only chose to boo 2 things: K-Rod serving up that home run and Miguel Cabrera grounding into a lazy double play.
Well,
what does that say?
Well, no, I think you bring up
Victor Martinez made outs in that game. He's hitting .220. Cabrera's at least hitting .330 in June.
Well, Victor Martinez hitting .229 in June.
Nick Castellanos has been brutal at times.
Yeah, and Justin Upton made a bad play in the first inning.
Those guys didn't get booed.
Well, Justin Upton did. There was some smattering.
Well, if I missed that, then that's on me.
Okay, here's the thing. Let's face it. This team's been frustrating all year. It's not just now, okay, and it's not just with those guys. I think what transpired with Cabrera is that people finally had said, my goodness, we've got opportunities here. We're not taking advantage of it. And I think nobody in this town feels like this team should be under 500. Francisco Rodriguez, I wondered this. Tell me what you think. Do you think fans feel like you spouted off to the Detroit News the other day? You said you're not a mop-up guy. You said you haven't talked with Brad Ausmus or Rich Doobie. Brad Ausmus came back, told me the very next day, actually, that door swings both ways.
Right.
I did talk to him. In Houston. I saw Rich Doobie last night, Chad, after Francisco Rodriguez gave up the home run. I was in the camera well, all right next to the Tigers dugout. I saw Rich Doobie walk up to Francisco Rodriguez and pat him on the left side of the leg and give him some encouraging words and then sit down. I think fans have a hard time believing Francisco Rodriguez. And because he's surrendered, 7 homers now this year, and he hasn't pitched very many innings, because he's struggled with that. And look, the high-stress situations, you and I both know this. They're different. We get it. We're not suggesting they're any different. We know that the 9th inning is different than any other inning. That's why it can be very difficult. But you and I both also recognize this. Francisco Rodriguez, despite the 437 career home runs. Talk about that all you want, Francisco. People are judging you based on what you're doing right now, and I think for good reason. And what they're noticing that is that in a high leverage situation against Kansas City, Eric Hosmer took you deep. And that in a high leverage situation last night, when you were called upon, what did you do? You gave up a home run that tied the game. And that's, sorry, that is not... That's not acceptable to fans. And when you sit here and you complain and you say, I deserve to be this and I should be measured by this, that, and the other thing, 7 home runs this year is more than you gave up last year. It's more than you gave up the year before. And it's the total of 2013. You've been bad. So if people want to be frustrated and boo him, I almost understand it. I've never been a big guy who believes in booing. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around booing Miguel Cabrera. You can be disappointed with him. You can call and blog and tweet and write what's wrong with him, but to boo him I thought was a little extreme.
Well, I don't know how much of a line there is between those things for fans. For the average fan,
You're probably right.
I think it's actually more laborsome for that person to send a tweet than to boo at a game.
Right.
Because then they got to take their phone out, they got to unlock the screen, they got to use their thumb. No, I'm just kidding. But people will complain about doing the easiest things. It's interesting though. I don't disagree with you one shred, and we've talked about this before about K-Rod. He cannot lean on the previous 400, however many saves. Okay?
Right. When does that stop? I mean, seriously.
No. Okay.
When do we stop doing that?
I understand you, but in an article that was published in the Detroit News by Chris McCoskey today, Lloyd McClendon talked about Ian Kinsler and Miguel Cabrera, and I know it's apples and oranges, but he basically says his quote is about those guys and their offensive struggles. The problem is we get caught up in the moment and we stop seeing the big picture. When the big picture is all said and done, the numbers are going to be right where they're supposed to be. They have to trust that. Check the book doesn't lie. What you've done in past years is what you're going to do. Some years you may be 10% higher or 10% lower, but they're saying basically when you're an established MLB player with a track record, offensively you have a predictable, it's almost formulaic, and I can tell you roughly where you're going to be at the end of the year. That's his way of, I don't know if this is the right phrase, but almost buying time for those guys who are in the midst of those struggles right now. That logic doesn't apply to other things. That doesn't apply to K-Rod saves. That doesn't apply to starting pitchers who look at Rick Porcello. He won the Cy Young last year, won 20 games, and he's struggled at times this year. He's at least scuffled, I would say.
Oh, big time.
Certainly not been the guy that he was a year ago.
But when do you get the track record?
No, right. But out in Boston, John Farrell isn't saying, we know what Rick did last year.
Yeah.
He'll get to 20 wins this year.
Yeah.
So that's not how it works.
Yeah, right.
So why are we able to apply that offensively when maybe Miguel Cabrera is going to finish the year at 275 because he's trying to play through hip flexor, back, and groin issues, and maybe you just can't overcome that physically.
But my question is, when do you build the track record? Sure, Francisco Rodriguez had 44 saves last year, 38,
right, so
44
what's the appropriate sample size to draw from when you're making these conclusions?
And when does it stop?
In the midst of a season? Yeah, I mean...
Okay, you're right about Lloyd McClendon, and that's fine. They reached their level.
The hitting coach.
How come Corey Dickerson's hitting almost 100 points higher than he did a year ago?
That's a great question.
Has he hit his level?
I got Carlos Gonzalez in fantasy. He's hit 190 in June and about 202 on the year.
There you go. I mean, when does it stop? I don't know, but it's almost as if we don't have the right to even question why he may be struggling.
Right.
Teams and athletes don't want to share the negative. They don't want to share that they're hurt because they're afraid, you're making it sound like an excuse. And maybe that's on us in the media to try and be a little bit more sympathetic to that. But if you're not willing to let us in on that information, then we're going to come to some conclusions, right. And the conclusion has been that you have struggled. You have not hit a home run since May 20th. It's a fair question to ask. Not everything can be, you know what, because he averages 34 his entire career, he's going to hit 34 right. Again. Look, that's not going to happen.
There's a negative connotation with the word excuses. Sometimes an excuse is a reason why something doesn't go the way you expect it to go. It's a legitimate thing to have in there. Excuse does not equate to whining or explaining to my boss why I couldn't get done what he needed me to get done or anything like that. There's real excuses. Miguel Cabrera has a number of very real excuses for why he's not performing the way he should be right now.
No question.
For him to leave those excuses in the dark is his own decision, but now I think he's seen the ramifications of leaving those in the dark. Yeah. And athletes in general understand that if you don't give the media anything, Pedro Martinez says this all the time, especially to young Latin American players who may not want to work through the English language barrier, things like that. He says if you don't give the media anything to say, you're giving them license to speculate. And in today's media landscape, where in the past people would speculate and be held accountable for their speculations because you had to go into the locker room the next day and put a microphone in front of somebody's face and actually answer to what you wrote about them. In today's media landscape, that's not the case.
Right.
So some blogger who sits at home and never will step a foot inside of Comerica Park except in the capacity of a fan with a couple beers down his gullet gets to write whatever he wants. Right. And Brad Ausmus gets to decide how much stock he puts into that. He doesn't have to put any into that, but every player in that Tiger organization has to make that decision. You're not going to get 25 guys on a 25-man roster, none of whom read the papers, none of whom are on Twitter, none of whom see what the fan base is saying about them. Okay, so from that perspective, without the informed and responsible journalist, I think players get a little gun shy on what they're willing to open up about. And sometimes
I understand
this is a lesson learned maybe for Miguel Cabrera that he could have opened up sooner.
Yeah, I totally get it. I really do. My problem is a little bit more about the fact that fans were booing him, and I'm not saying he is untouchable. I'm not saying that because of what he's done in the past means you can never be disappointed in him. I thought yesterday, I mean, we talked a little bit about it during our pregame on Fox Sports Detroit, and that was, hey, listen, what's wrong with Miguel Cabrera? Why are the power numbers down? Why is he swinging and missing at 92-mile-an-hour fastballs? Why is he taking some mediocre low 90 fastballs and following off down the right field line? Something is amiss.
And in that Alex Cobb at bat where they left him in, I believe it was the bottom of the 7th with 2 outs and Miguel Cabrera was up, and they left Alex Cobb in to face Cabrera.
And he challenged him with a fastball.
He threw a slider to start it off, and he threw 5 fastballs to finish the count.
Right.
Alex Cobb doesn't throw 98 miles an hour.
Correct.
It's the 7th inning. He's throwing 92, 94, maybe 96 if he got up there. And you're right. Cabrera got a piece of 1, but I think that was it.
Yeah, he challenged him.
He's getting beaten by pitches that he wouldn't allow himself to be beaten by in the past.
Exactly.
And what I notice, perhaps the most fun thing to watch about him as a hitter is his ability to take the pitch where it's given to him and hit to all fields.
Hit the other way, right.
And hit to all fields with power. I haven't seen him take a ball to right center, at least anything other than a screwball single up the middle. I haven't seen him take a hard double to right center and hit one to the gap like that in months, it feels like.
Yeah. So
it's noticeable.
It's a great sign that he was able to get off that proverbial home run less schneid, but it's also slightly concerning in that if he's got a bad back, how long will this linger? How long will this affect him? This could be a little bit of an issue here for Miguel Cabrera moving forward. And I hate to tell people this, you don't have anybody to back that up, okay? Because Victor Martinez has struggled, right, for sure. And who's the backup first baseman if Cabrera goes on the shelf for a second time, by the way, because he's already been on the shelf once. This team, and you and I have said this already in numerous podcasts, this team cannot survive. It will not win unless Miguel Cabrera, Ian Kinsler, J.D. Martinez, Justin Upton, and Victor Martinez are performing at a high level.
Yes.
Right now, J.D. Martinez is. Jose Iglesias has had an unbelievable June. He's had the second best batting average since late May, and this team will not find its way if Justin Verlander is not who he is. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's really important to bring these things up and discuss them regarding injury or anything else.
And to your point about if Miguel Cabrera were to go back on the shelf, thank God Alex Avila has shown himself, capable of bouncing back with the bat. Yeah. It's not been quite the same as of late, but we knew that wasn't sustainable for him to hit 350 or whatever the hell he was doing.
Right.
But
he was over 400 for a long period of time. Yeah. And look, and he struck out a few times last night, had some bad at-bats, but he did have the key at-bat before Cabrera's home run in the 9th inning where he had a 3-0 count and then swung on 3-0 because he was expecting, I believe he told me he was expecting a slider and he got it. He just didn't hit it. And then eventually he battled at a 3-2 and got the base hit that he needed for sure. So, a number of things at play there with the Tigers. really good baseball discussion. Find it hard to believe that people have, I don't want to say forgotten quickly, because I do believe people here have appreciated just how good Miguel Cabrera has been. He's the look. Not of my lifetime, but he's the best Tiger of your lifetime.
Yes.
Okay? And for many people, I don't care what age he is, he's been the best player in a Tigers uniform all time. That doesn't mean you can never be disappointed or frustrated with him. I think a lot of people get frustrated, especially those double plays. He's hit into, I believe, 5 of them this year. Could be 7. I forget exactly how many it is. But he's hit into enough to gain people's frustration. But booing, I think, takes it to a different level. The NHL has its protection list due this weekend. That means the Red Wings are going to have to protect a certain number of skaters and or goalies. Let's do the exposing of their list
and
first.
Let's clarify those numbers real quick first, because the Red Wings have elected to go the route of protecting 3 defensemen, 7 forwards, and 1 goaltender.
Okay.
So they are position locked.
So who would you expose? Not who would you protect? Well, look, take it either way you want. Detroit's got 11 draft picks next weekend. 11 draft picks. That doesn't mean that they won't expose certain players because they anticipate drafting a certain player in the draft. Let's talk about either who you want to expose or who you want to protect, whichever is easiest for you. I get the sense, let's just focus on the goalies first and foremost. I get the sense they're going to protect both Howard and Mrazek, and I think it's a mistake. I would expose Peter Mrazek. I would expose him.
You think they'll expose them both?
No, I think they'll protect them both.
How could they do that? You can only protect one.
Oh, you can only protect one.
Yeah, you can only protect one goalie.
I'm sorry.
So they got to leave one out there.
Okay, I think they're going to protect Peter Mrazek, and I think it's a mistake. I would expose Mrazek and Howard, quite honestly.
Do you think they'll keep Peter Mrazek because they think he is the
He's
better
younger?
goalie
No.
that has a better chance for them for the future, or do you think they keep Peter Mrazek because of the $1.2 million difference in cap hit?
I think it's more that
even though the cap's going up to possibly $75 million.
I think Peter Mrazek is the younger player, and they're going to protect him from that sense.
So Detroit really has options, and we've talked about a couple of the guys that seem to be locks and a couple of the guys that seem to be up in the air. Strangely enough, Nick Jensen is the guy I almost feel most strongly about.
Me too.
Like, please make sure he doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And one of the things that the Red Wings struggle with, in my opinion, from top down on this roster is zone entry, controlled zone entry. And unless Henrik Zetterberg is bringing the puck in for the Wings, they're going to chip it and chase it.
Yeah.
And with guys like Larkin and Athanasiou, that's not the worst thing in the world, but Nick Jensen actually brings a little bit of stability on the back end in terms of zone entry, specifically power play zone entry, even though he's not a major special teams guy.
Could you have made the argument that
It just seems like an area to me that he brings that the Red Wings don't have anyone else that can do that.
Could you have made the argument that he was their best defenseman last year?
In stretches, for sure. I think he was their best defenseman.
Plus, he signed for 2 years, Chad, at about $800,000.
Extremely affordable. A guy who is in his late 20s, I believe, that didn't break into the league
He's
into
26.
this stage. So
26.
He understands what I get about that is he really values it. He values every day in the experience. He didn't just walk in at 19 and has never known anything but the NHL. He paid his dues for a really long time, and now he's valuing this opportunity and making the most of it.
Yeah, he's been really good. So we're pretty close on defensemen. Now, this is where it gets maybe a little bit iffy, and that's the forwards. There are 7, all right? 7 that you must protect.
And we should say off the bat, you don't have to protect Dylan Larkin.
Correct. You don't have to do that. And you cannot expose Franz Nielsen, all right, because he just signed with your team. So let's go with the 7.
Real quick, is that almost like if Detroit were able to expose Franz Nielsen, do you think the league's thinking in drawing up that rule is to say this is almost like you getting a free buyout?
Absolutely.
A less expensive free buyout.
Yeah,
so they're actively trying to prevent that.
Yeah, just so people know, he has a no-movement clause in his contract, and they have to protect him. It's as simple as that. They have to protect him because you're right. It's just basically seen that you can unload his $5 million salary. So I think it's fair to say that there are 2 that you and I would absolutely 100% agree on who you'd protect, right? Andreas Athanasiou, Anthony Mantha, right? So you got those 2 plus Franz Nielsen. There's 3 you have to protect. Give me the other 4.
No one's going to say not to protect Henrik Zetterberg. So
right, he was the best player last year.
One of those spots belongs to Henrik Zetterberg.
Okay, there's 4. Give me the other 3.
That's 4. Now let's talk about in these final 3 spots, who your options are before I give you the 3 that I would keep. Okay, just so that people understand what decisions you're making. You got 3 spots for Gus Nyquist, Justin Abdelkader, who remember wears a letter and is from this state. And I know that's not top of mind for these people making these decisions, but that does matter a little bit.
Riley Sheehan,
Darren Helm, Luke Glendenning,
Thomas Tatar.
Right. Those are the 6 guys that you've only got 3 spots for. I think the refrain from Red Wings fans for the last couple years has been, between Nyquist and Tatar, can one of them please separate themselves and show that you're a player who's capable of more than the surface traits that the other guy also brings to the table, sometimes just as well, if not better. Both of them have had stretches that make me say, that's the guy I want to keep. You can ship the other one to shore. And then both of them also have stretches where they go a really long time without producing, and certainly don't look like top 6 NHL forwards. Of that group of 6, I would say...
Well, Thomas Nosek is in there, too.
That's a great point. Thomas Nosek is a guy who a lot of people think is going to be a Red Wing this fall.
He will be.
He will be part of that 4th line or that 3rd line.
He will be.
So, I don't know.
Did you mention Darren Helm, too, by the way?
I did mention Helm.
Right.
You're taking a bit of a gamble with Nosek in that...
I'm protecting him.
How does Vegas value or evaluate him as a player? Do they see him the same way our organization does?
Well, here's what they see. They see a guy who signed through a year. He's going to make $600,000 for them. They need 4th-line guys, too. Why not? That's what they see. Look, he's the guy who's going to take the place of Andrew Miller. All right? That's what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Or Drew Miller. I'm sorry. I said Andrew Miller. Drew Miller.
I wish we had Andrew Miller in this town.
Me too. So I think that's that. I think he's the guy. So I'm protecting him. I'm not a huge Gus Nyquist fan. Anyone who's listened to me understands that. I would side more with Thomas Tatar. So I would protect Thomas Tatar as well. And that leaves me with a choice between Helm, who I would expose, Nyquist, who I would expose, Abdelkader, and I think
Nosek?
and well, no, I said
and Sheehan too,
and Sheehan.
Yeah.
And I think what they're going to do is I think they're going to protect Abdelkader and expose the other guys.
Yeah.
And I guess to a certain extent, Chad, I don't have as big a deal for that. I think last year was more of an aberration than it was something that's going to continue. I think he's going to be. I think he'll be able to turn it around, and I would be more apt, even though he makes $4.25 million, of protecting him and leaving the other guys that I just mentioned exposed. So my forwards would be Athanasiou, Zetterberg, Mantha, Nosek, Nielsen, Tatar, and Abdelkader.
Yeah, I didn't do a good job giving you a straight answer on mine either. So let's just compare lists. The 4 that we know: Zetterberg, Nielsen,
Athanasiou and Mantha.
Athanasiou and Mantha we're taking for sure. With my other 3, I would protect Abdelkader. I'm with you on the Tatar-Nyquist split. I think Tatar is a little bit better scorer, better finisher around the net. And I think I wouldn't call either responsibly defensible, so I won't go that far. And I think with that last spot, for me, I don't know that I've seen enough of Thomas Nosek to give him that spot. I trust your word and people like Ansar Khan of MLive who speak highly of him. I think we're underselling one X factor here with the Red Wings, and that's I think they're going to think a little bit harder about protecting Riley Sheehan than the rest of us are. It was a dreadful season last year. What do you have, 80 games without a goal? Or he scored in the last game of the year.
Scored in the last game.
Yeah,
2 goals, actually.
Maybe played 81 games. If he sat one game, maybe played 81 without scoring.
He sat a couple,
which is just incredible. But if you recall, despite all that, despite the struggles, there was still interest for him at the trade deadline. It might not have been huge. It wouldn't have been a massive return. But how often do we talk, and we just did this last week when we talked about Nashville and Pittsburgh and how much of a stark difference the Pittsburgh centers were to the Nashville centers. How many really good big centers that can play 2 ways, that can play on the power play or on the penalty kill if needed, that can win draws for you, are out there? And I'm not banging the drum for Riley Sheehan deserves a spot for sure. You're crazy if you don't protect him. All I'm saying is that front office might be thinking about him a little bit harder than the rest of us are in the public eye.
Problem is he's also minus 29, bud.
Sure.
So
again,
you're minus 29. You're at 5th worst in the NHL.
Okay, but how bad was Larkin? How bad was I'm sorry, not Larkin. How bad was Tatar? How bad was Nyquist? So
Agreed.
Against the guys you're comparing him to, if he was a minus 29 and Thomas Tatar was a minus 26, then you can throw out the plus-minus category in for my evaluation in terms of either gaining edge on the other.
Yeah, Tatar led the Wings in goals, though, with 25. So I don't know how you can compare the two. Shane's going to make $2 million.
Well, that's also a bigger detriment to his plus minus. I don't know exactly what it was last year, but if he led the team in goals and he has an awful plus minus, all the more reason that's that means he's on the ice for twice as many as he's given up or as he's scoring. So I understand what you're saying. It's not a direct apples to apples comparison. But
I'm just saying we know this team lacks scoring. Okay, they're bad on the back end, no question, but they lack scoring too. Thomas Tatar has scored 94 goals the last 4 years.
Right.
He's scored 20 or more in each of the last 3, and though that's not Connor McDavid-esque, although that is not the second coming of Sidney Crosby, it is something this team lacks, and he's worth protecting more so than Riley Shane. Riley Shane's a big body. You and I both know that. 6'3", 218 pounds, but he doesn't play as big as you would like him to play. You're right. I think there's still interest there. I think Las Vegas would be happy to take a guy like that.
They might do that. He might be their fourth-line center come day one, and that would be a great
might
start
be
for
more
Vegas.
He might be more than that.
That could be a great start for Vegas.
Here's what you have to look at. Who do we have to take that place? Who do we have to replace him? Darren Helm, go.
Right.
We'll replace you with Tyler Bertuzzi, right?
Right, or Martin Furk.
Or Martin Furk.
Somebody.
Martin Furk I'm not a big fan of, but I mean, you understand that.
The bodies are there.
Yeah, the bodies are definitely there in the right spots.
That's a good point. I think there's a distinction to make, and we've talked about this in the past about coaching changes. You better have somebody lined up to take that guy's spot. So if you're prepared to lose, and that's why Tampa's doing what they did with Jonathan Drouin. They're saying we're not prepared to lose Jonathan Drouin for nothing and then be able to plug somebody right into that spot. If we're going to take a hit in production in this area, then we're at least going to get something back for it. And they got a blue-chip defensive prospect back from Montreal. That's an area of need that they have. They've spent a lot of money on Victor Hedman. They know they don't have as much to spend on their other defensemen. That's a shrewd move by Steve Yzerman. And how about him having the stones and Mark Bergevin to fight, despite the fact that he's pulled a couple shaky deals in the past few years? How about both those guys having the stones to pull the trigger on a deal where there are a couple players involved there that other GMs may have said you can't touch them for anything?
Right.
That's interesting stuff. Let's transition a little bit more now into an exciting announcement that was made this week after months and months, maybe even a year. My timetable might be screwed up.
This thing took the internet by storm,
Well,
didn't
the speculation has been forever. Conor McGregor, his last fight is against Nate Diaz in a rematch.
Who won?
Conor McGregor won the rematch.
Okay.
Nate Diaz won the first fight.
Okay.
This next fight, now Conor wants to take his skills to the boxing ring. Okay, stepping out of the octagon of MMA, mixed martial arts, and stepping into the boxing ring to take on what many consider to be the greatest boxer of all time. Unequivocally, I think the most accomplished technical boxer of all time. Nobody hits and doesn't get hit in the history of boxing, probably better than Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah. Well, 49-0.
49-0. Yeah. Has not fought since September 2015. Has been, using the R word, retired, which we know means very little in sports today. Has not knocked anyone out since 2011 for Floyd Mayweather, and he's ready to go.
Has he been known as a knockout artist
throughout his
anyway?
career? No, he's never been known as a knockout artist. He's a technical guy. He'll win on the card. He'll tire you out.
Great boxer, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
I want to ask you, as somebody who grew up in a different era of fighting and boxing, the level of appreciation and respect people had for boxers at that time, and the way that people might gather around with their families or with go to their friend's house and buy a fight and go watch a fight.
We never had to buy it. Let's remember that. So when I watched Pernell Whitaker, I would watch him on a Saturday afternoon after he won the gold medal. When I watched Sugar Ray Leonard or Tommy Hearns, we would be able to have a chance to watch that. Some of these were paid. When you watch Larry Holmes fight Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali fight Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali fight George Foreman, guys like that, we were able to watch those without having to necessarily purchase them. But those were massive fights against two great, and I don't underuse that word at all, two great fighters. Are these two boxers, I have to now use Conor McGregor as a boxer, right? Are they great fighters?
Well, I want to ask you real quick, would you have been a boxing fan, do you think? You or your father been a boxing fan if things like pay-per-views were involved?
No, probably not.
So the free casual viewership is what lured you in?
I think the athlete lured me in. The athlete lured me in more than anything else. To read about and watch Sugar Ray Leonard win in the Olympics and then fight was interesting to me. To watch Sweet Pea Whitaker fight and then move on to the fight in the Olympics and move on was an allure to me. To see the hype around Ali and Frazier and so on and so forth. That was an allure to me. Leon Spinks, Michael Spinks, their Olympic performances were an allure to me. So I wanted to keep following them. I don't think pay-per-view would have been able to hook me like that.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting factor because exposability is a big thing, and
or overexposure in McGregor's case.
Well, I don't know. You don't know anything about UFC or MMA, and you know who he is. That says a lot about him.
No, I know a little bit of it.
He's gone from nowhere to where he's at right now in about 3 years, 5 years.
I do know a little bit about it from talking to you and some others who are really into it. I don't watch it as often as you do. I don't know if I don't think a guy like that can beat the tactician of Floyd Mayweather, because MMA, UFC, whatever it may be, is not just boxing. You're not standing there boxing. How much of their 3 rounds would you say, if you broke it down to wrestling? It's I know it's martial arts, but let's call it. Can I simplify it and say karate, boxing, and wrestling? Is that fair? Or judo? I mean,
yeah. There's a lot of disciplines involved.
Okay, all right.
Karate
So
is not really one of them, but I understand what you're getting at.
So break down where boxing is among that 100%. Is it 30%? I know it depends on the opponent and it depends on how the fight is going. But roughly, Conor McGregor has, quote unquote, perfected how much of his boxing skills to use on a fight-to-fight basis compared to Floyd Mayweather.
I know you're looking for a shorter answer. It's tough to condense it to that, and I'll give you the reason why. Guys in MMA have different styles, okay? And the sport is about, when it originally started in the late 90s.
I know, I precluded that.
Right, the sport is about, let's challenge this, my jiu-jitsu versus your sambo, and decide which is the better discipline. Today's fighters have to have a little bit of all of that. So Conor McGregor has a little bit of all of that. His boxing is his strength, his striking is his strength, and that's the style he wants to dictate. But just like in a football game where the Packers want to control the ball, or Tom Brady wants to control the ball and then throw whenever he has to and things like that, and force teams off the field on third down. Just like you want to dictate your style of play, a fight you want to dictate as well. And in MMA, there's so many options that I can be a wrestler. Damian Maia, for example, has a 185-pound title shot coming up at UFC, possibly UFC 214. He's considered the best or one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in mixed martial arts history. He wants to take you to the ground. You know he wants to take you to the ground, and that when you get there, doesn't matter what you do, he's gonna choke you out. Both of you guys are gonna start on your feet. So why would you ever let him take you to the ground? It doesn't matter if you know what he's trying to do. He's so good that he can dictate the style of that fight. Conor's been able to dictate stand-up fights in MMA. He has no choice but to box with Floyd Mayweather. Okay,
I get that, but Conor McGregor can always turn to something else.
But what I'm trying to tell you is that his strengths are not those things. He wants to stand and punch with guys. When he fought Nate Diaz would love to take that fight to the ground for the whole time because he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's going to whoop Conor if that's the case. And that's exactly what he did in the first fight. Got him by rear naked choke. Conor wants to stand up and punch with you. So now he's facing another guy who also only can and wants to stand up and punch with you.
Okay, so is it fair to say that Conor McGregor's strength of his UFC is his boxing? If you had 4 different categories of MMA, jiu-jitsu, wrestling,
there's no question Conor's strength is his striking.
Is he one of the greatest striking / boxing MMA fighters of all time? Are we looking at that type of situation? Remember this, he's got to move up in weight, so he's going to have to gain a little bit of weight, which means
Conor comes down.
Oh, he comes down?
They're going to fight at 154. Conor holds belts at 155 and 170 right now.
Okay, I thought he was lighter. I thought he has to come up.
So Conor fought Nate Diaz at a catch weight of 170 pounds. The other fight was supposed to be a 155er. Nate was heavier, you can make changes with the purse in that instance where it's no longer a title fight because the first guy pulled out. The first time they fought, Nate Diaz took the fight on about 11 days' notice or so. Conor is going to come down, but 155 is not a huge cut for him.
All right.
It's not like he walks around at 200.
No, I didn't think he did, but I thought for some reason he had to move up. I thought he was like at 146 or something.
It's more Floyd's. It's closer to Floyd's natural fight weight, but it's not a big dramatic change for Conor. If Conor steps back into the UFC, this is probably the belt he goes back to get. Is the one he keeps the 155 and goes back to get the 45 or something like that.
I got you.
So it's not totally crazy, but what's different is the conditioning. In MMA, you have 3 5-minute rounds in the UFC. In boxing, it's 12 round or is it 10 or 12? 10 or 12 10 or 12 3-minute rounds.
Right.
Okay, so tighter sprints versus 3 5-minute rounds in a regular MMA fight. Conor's been fighting title fights recently. Those are 5 5-minute rounds, 25 minutes of actual combat. Okay, Conor's been off since his last Diaz fight, which
November,
was in the previous fall, because his daughter or his longtime partner, I believe her name is Dee, over in Ireland, gave birth to their son. He didn't want to. She doesn't like when he fights. He doesn't want to stress her out during the pregnancy hormones, getting ready for a fight and things like that. So he's been off for 6+ months. The UFC has dramatically missed him in that time, and this is not a UFC fight, but this is great for the UFC. As long as Conor doesn't walk out and get knocked out in about 11 seconds like he did to Jose Aldo 2 Novembers ago. That's the only way it's really bad.
Is it good for boxing?
No.
Why?
Oscar De La Hoya wrote an open letter on his Facebook page effectively imploring and encouraging fans of boxing to kind of speak out against this. And
Why?
He called Pacquiao-Mayweather a black eye for the sport because of the hype train. And we're going to talk a little bit about this in a second. We won't go too long, but we'll talk about it briefly. He called Mayweather-Pacquiao a black eye for the sport because of the hype train. The matchup of the best two pound-for-pound fighters in the world that just didn't deliver. Why else was that such a problem, that fight? Well, it was a problem because Floyd Mayweather hyped the crap out of that fight, and Manny Pacquiao is a soft-spoken guy whose English isn't great. Okay, he's very religious and pious in that way. The hype did not match. The hype did not match the product, did not match the actual billing. Nothing was right about that fight. And in that sense, when everyone should have focused on the technical boxing and the display of athleticism in the ring, instead they focus on everything that happened outside of the ring. Oscar De La Hoya posits that this is going to do the same thing, only it's basically a circus freak show. Because Conor McGregor just got a boxing license last year, I believe. He doesn't have professional boxing fights. You're talking about 49-0 and a guy who many consider to be the best technical boxer ever. He doesn't get 49-0 with 40 knockouts where people are walking into his right hand.
But that's not the point. The question is, why isn't it bad for boxing? Or why is this bad for boxing?
Because
Look, boxing is
because you're going to have people who aren't boxing fans who watch this fight, and this is not how you want the sport represented to a casual observer.
Okay, listen. You know what really generates boxing fans? This is age old. Okay, as much as I loved Leonard and Hearns and I loved Marvelous Marvin Hagler and all those other guys. It's the heavyweight division, man. People want to see the big boys go to battle. They wanted to see Mike Tyson. They loved Foreman. They loved Ali. They loved Frazier and Norton and all those guys. Guess what? We don't even know who the damn heavyweight division champion of all time or is right now, okay? It's some dude by the name of Anthony Johnson who's 19-0 for crying out loud.
He's unbelievable. I do know who he is.
Okay, well, that's fine. You know who he is? I'm tired of the whole, this is what's good for boxing, what's bad for boxing. You know what's good for boxing? It's good for boxing if people are starting to talk about it. It's good for boxing if people, if people are going to start watching this. If you're getting a bunch of MMA guys watching this, boxing shouldn't be worried about whether or not, oh my gosh, this is how they perceive it. Boxing should just be grateful that they're actually watching the damn sport in the first place.
I agree with you if those translate to future pay-per-view sales, future actual
they may.
fans. But
we don't know it
but
won't.
I don't. That's the thing, and I don't think boxing purists in general are too encouraged about a big overlap between MMA fans now suddenly converting to boxing. Part of why MMA fans like MMA is because, it's kind of like you and I trying to get talked into watching a flag football game, and all of a sudden we're going to be fans of the NFL and this flag football league. It's not the same thing. I got my version I feel is better. I feel it has everything your version has and then some.
I'm not saying it's the same thing.
I'm
telling you it's not bad for boxing.
I don't think boxing thinks it can get a lot of new fans out of this. And here's the part that
they've got a dwindling fan base.
This is the part that people aren't considering in the equation, is that this cuts. Floyd Mayweather is not a current belt holder in the sense that he's not actively defending his belt. He's supposed to be retired.
I know.
If that were the case, that would be even worse. There are true contenders that exist in the boxing world, and this is part of Oscar De La Hoya's point. Those people are all getting cut in line for the payday, for the pay-per-view, for Conor. Conor jumps to the front of the line, and we've seen this in MMA as well.
Here's
where
what I would
guys
argue.
who are not contenders, guys who they haven't built the body of work that shows they deserve a title shot.
Here's what
jump to the front of the line.
Here's what I would argue. What's the weight that they're fighting at again? 154?
155, 156.
So it's the junior middleweight is what it is.
I'm sorry.
There are 4 champions. There are 4 belts, I should say. 4 belts at the junior middleweight division. WBO, IBF, WBA, and WBC. There's not a person outside the boxing snobbery who can name any of them,
right?
Including one of them that is vacant. The WBO is vacant, for crying out loud. People like Oscar De La Hoya getting on his high and mighty horse about boxing and all this other crap because it's his sport is trying to convince us that this isn't good for boxing because guys aren't getting a shot. Guess what? Manny Pacquiao got a shot and got his ass kicked. Manny Pacquiao's the champion of the WBO in the 147 division. What does that say about boxing? Knock it off. It's good for boxing because it's people talking about the sport when they haven't talked about it forever. It's good for boxing because you actually recognize two names who are actually going to fight. Can you give me another division in the sport of boxing where you recognize even two of the four division champions? You could back in the day. You sure as hell can't now.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right. There's boxing. And I run into this issue in the same thing with UFC. And look, I've worked with a number of Olympic-level sports, and I understand when you're trying to explain a new sport to somebody, it's really great when you can just point out to the field and say, see that team? They want to take the ball and put it over there.
Right.
And instead, you got a lot of complexities. That drives fans away when they have to learn or read a book before they can understand how a sport actually works. And so these split titles, you're right. When there's 4 different titles going on,
Stupid.
That's confusing. I get confused as a casual UFC fan at times with the number of weight classes. And if you listen to real MMA fans, their argument is for more weight classes, not fewer. So if you love the sport, it's awesome to have 8 belt holders at once. If you're just trying to get in and I'm explaining it to you, hey, this guy's the champ at 155, but 10 pounds lighter than him is this other guy, and they've never fought before, so we don't really know in between 145 and 155 who the champ. They don't really want to hear that kind of stuff. It can be confusing when you hear about more of them. So boxing, you're right. I think boxing would benefit from more unified titles. The guy you mentioned earlier, Anthony Joshua, has a unified heavyweight title right now, and that's why it's exciting, and he's a little bit, at least, emerging into the American.
Yeah, but he owns 2 of the 4 belts in the heavyweight division. What about Joseph Parker and Deontay Wilder? Those are the other 2 champions in the heavyweight division. Nobody knows who these guys are.
Deontay Wilder. I think he might have just taken one from Deontay Wilder.
Right. So I thought he was the WBC.
No, but point aside, the point remains. You're right. As long as there's another guy out there who has something to detract from what you're doing, that claim is valid. Right. But I think we're getting a little bit too tied up into the technicalities of it, and it's probably my fault for bringing up the Oscar De La Hoya letter. But let's not kid ourselves. This is a straight financial thing. And this, to me...
They all are.
Okay. But people don't like to think about it like that. People don't like to think about sports like that. So let's take a look in the mirror collectively.
What are you talking about? That's all they bring up. You and I talked about Miguel Cabrera earlier. Miguel Cabrera, well, they're paying him this amount of money he ought to do. We talked about Riley Shane. He's making $2 million. Money is associated with athletes every single day. It's what we use to base on whether or not a guy is worth it and a guy is having a good year or he's not. Don't shy away from that.
Only when it means saving your money. No one's out in Golden State, throwing a riot because Steph Curry only made $600,000 last year.
No, but their owner came out and said we're going to do whatever we possibly can to make sure he doesn't leave here. Sure. Otherwise, there would be that riot.
That's fine, but we don't know what kind of conversations were held before that kind of...
The bottom line is it's about money. It's still about money.
Okay, but what I'm trying to tell you is I don't disagree with you. People don't like to think of it that way. Nobody likes to think of... When you go to your college football game, you don't like to think of the money that's involved behind the equation. When you go to the Tigers game, you don't like to think about the money behind it.
I'm not saying you like to. I'm telling you that it's obvious and there's nothing you can do about it. It's just what people talk about.
But if it's such a transparent and ugly money grab... And trust me, I'm going to buy the fight. I'm going to watch it. But isn't there something to be said that we can't resist watching a train wreck in some respects? And this is the Kardashian of the boxing fights, okay?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, because both of these guys have great talent.
To it.
But they have talent. Just because they're not fighting for a championship belt doesn't mean that you can't watch it or it's not worth watching. This is not the Kardashians of the boxing world. The Kardashians have no talent whatsoever. If they weren't naked once in a while and didn't have really good bodies, people wouldn't even watch it in the first place. People would watch this because these two guys are elite in their respective sports, and it's never been done before, and both of them still have certain reputations. This isn't even close to the Kardashians of boxing.
It's the hype about it that makes it.
But that's not their fault.
Yes, it is. It's Conor and Floyd. It's their design. It's their intention. What are you talking about? This is what we just addressed. Floyd and Pacquiao, okay? The hype didn't match on Pacquiao's end. He didn't reciprocate. Floyd has found in Conor somebody who will reciprocate the hype. He will go blow for blow and maybe even go harder in the hype train than Floyd will. That means more money for both of them. That's what it's all about. People like to talk about, they think about these secret behind-door meetings all the time and Illuminati and all this other stuff. I can really picture a situation where Floyd and Conor sit down at a table. They talk about, they say, I'm going to say this about you. You're going to say this about me. I'm going to call your mother this. I'm going to call your father that. Sure. Okay, so
I don't
as
disagree
American,
with that.
okay,
you don't think that happens in UFC?
Not the same way. Absolutely not.
I bet it happens all the time in UFC.
I watch the press conferences. You don't, so I know. I know it doesn't happen like that because I watch the fights the guys have when they talk shit about each other. Okay,
you still haven't seen the press conference between Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor, so you don't know that either. So what difference does it make?
You think that's going to be a docile, quiet press conference?
No, I don't. But there's been plenty of.
There's going to be more action in the press conference than the fight.
I'm not going to be so cynical to think that everything is staged. But I also understand that creating more hype brings more dollars, brings more interest, brings more articles, brings more reports about it. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
It's a transparent money grab. It's not about the quality of fighting for either Conor or Floyd or whatever sport. Even if Floyd was doing MMA,
then why are you buying
more
it?
Of a farce?
What are you buying it for?
Because Conor's the most entertaining athlete I know. Period.
All right. So both of them will be entertaining. It should be entertaining for you. That's why you're buying it. Maybe that's why a lot of people will buy it. That doesn't. Boxing has always been about hype. It's been about pumping one guy up against another.
The hype used to match something. That's what Oscar De La Hoya's point is. You hyped up Pacquiao-Mayweather and it sucked. And people now are not excited for the next round of quality boxing.
Okay.
You're going to hype up Mayweather-Pacquiao or Mayweather-McGregor, and this might be the last straw for people. They might say, I'm done with boxing. Screw this.
So we're going to use one example. Mayweather-Pacquiao didn't live up to it, so forget it. How about...
I can't tell you a single other fight, except for a couple that have happened in 2017 that have actually been good, that's occurred in my lifetime.
Okay, well, I can think of a lot that have occurred in my lifetime. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. All the hype and how they lived up to the hype.
Not this millennia, and that's the point. Boxing's dead. So this is a crappy money draw. It's just like it's like a staged Super Bowl between the 2-14 Cowboys and the
how can you say that?
16-0 Patriots or something like that? How can you say the
2-14 Cowboys when one guy's 49-0 and the other guy has only lost twice?
No background in boxing. He has not ever been only a boxer, and that's why people think Floyd will work him. I hope that's not the case. Nothing would make me happier.
Maybe it speaks volumes about the sport of boxing that there's not many good fighters out there. Do you ever think about that?
No, the point is there's a ton of good fighters out there, and he bypassed all of them to go fight the guy who's going to make them both more money. That's what he's pissed about.
Well, that's because he could go back and fight Manny Pacquiao again for a championship, and that would draw a ton of money too. But you just ripped on that and how that didn't live up to the hype. So what are you supposed to do?
There was a curtain in front of Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. No one knew what was behind the curtain. It's been drawn back. Everyone's seen the little man with the microphone in Oz. Okay, we all know what that would look like. There's an aura of mystery about this. And Conor talks so much shit, and Floyd's dumb enough to bite every single damn time, that this is going to be really entertaining leading up to this. You've piqued our interest again, okay? That's what people do. This is what cheap media cycle is. All you got to do is grab our attention, and we bite on hook, line, and sinker. Now you're selling T-shirts and making a living off something like that.
Well, what if they do live up to the hype? You'll be eating your words.
I would love for this to go 12 rounds and for Conor to deliver to the left hand of God to Floyd's jaw and that he can't even talk in the post-game presser. I would love nothing more. Every boxing fan and expert out there, not saying they're for sure going to be right, thinks Floyd's going to dispose of him very quickly or outwork him. My hope is that Conor's cardio is so good that Floyd's not going to be able to outwork him because that's what he wants to do is touch up the body and get out of there before Conor swings that left hand with him because that left hand might be as hard or harder than just about anybody Floyd's ever gone against. Now, you're also talking about a totally different type of handwear. Boxing gloves are not MMA gloves. They're lighter, but there's a significant amount more padding. Conor's footwork is good. It's not Floyd Mayweather good. Floyd Mayweather good is stupid footwork. But
Conor McGregor, I would argue, could also take a hell of a lot more punches than Floyd Mayweather believes. What Conor McGregor has gone through in his career, is Floyd Mayweather going to be able to hurt him? Floyd's
never taken a shin or a knee to the jaw.
Right. So Floyd Mayweather is probably going to have to outpoint him, that's why some people, I think they're kind of overlooking that. Conor McGregor should be able, if he's got the cardio, he should be able to last a while because I don't think Floyd Mayweather not only has the capability of knocking him out, but hasn't shown the propensity to do so.
He hasn't knocked anyone out since 2011. He wasn't a knockout artist before, as we acknowledge. And why would he go for the knock? Why would he put himself in danger? So there's a couple really good articles that's been written about this fight already. As we've talked about, the hype is absolutely off the train. The call the fight team is going to be a good broadcast team. There's going to be a little bit of mix of boxing and a little bit of mix of MMA coverage in that, including Bellator's Mario Hualo for the MMA side of things. But let's not get confused about the money aspect of this. Conor appeared on the Forbes World's Highest Paid Athletes list for the first time in his career this year. Number 24, he made $34 million last year. Floyd, obviously not an active athlete, wouldn't be on the list, but in the 4 years prior to his retirement, he was the number one athlete. Made $340 million in 2016 and made stupid money in the couple years before that. How he could conceivably even need another 9-figure payday is beyond me, but apparently his funds are low enough where he actually wants to come out of retirement and take this fight. I'm genuinely curious if Conor talked enough shit to just pique Floyd Mayweather's interest to the point where he said, I wasn't going to fight this guy. I don't need the money, but damn it, he's come at my pride to this point. And that's what Conor does better than anybody in fighting in mixed martial arts or in combat sports in general right now. And we saw him do it to Jose Aldo 2 Novembers ago. He gets in your head, so when you step out in that ring, you want to come at him like a rabid dog, and he's just waiting there with the left hand to pop you.
Well, I would just remind you this. I don't think Floyd Mayweather is doing it for the money. That's all. I don't think he's got to come out of retirement because his bank account is low. I think he's doing it for a number of things. First of all, he wants to be 50-0, what Rocky Marciano was. I think he wants to he wants to cash in and be able to basically say, I've had the highest paydays of all time, and he wants to put this thing to bed once and for all and shut Conor McGregor up.